Is the Prime Minister about to quit his job? So Keir Starmer is spending the weekend contemplating his future. Andy Burnham's victory in the Makerfield by-election means the man dubbed King of the North is expected to come south tomorrow and is coming for Starmer's job. Starmer's determination on Friday was to stand and fight, but that talk of defiance has faded fast. Nothing is certain, but we could be on the verge of yet another change here in Number 10. And what does that say about us as a country if there are 7 prime ministers in just a decade? Morning, at the start of what could be a momentous week in British politics. With us live this morning from Keir Starmer's cabinet, Peter Kyle, the Business Secretary, and the Shadow Chancellor, Mel Stride, joins us for the Conservatives. We'll hear from Labour grandee Lord Hutton, who served Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. Paul Ovenden, who worked by Keir Starmer's side for 6 years, gives us his first TV interview. And the former Cabinet Secretary, Lord Simon Case, explains the cost of political chaos. At the desk for the next hour, Labour MPs, 3 of those who could decide the Prime Minister's future: Toby Perkins, Jess Phillips and Luke Charters. But before we start our conversations, let's start, as ever, with the headlines this morning. On the front of The Observer, they think it's all over. A photo of a smiling Andy Burnham on the pitch. Anyone think there's a big contest on? The Observer claims the Prime Minister will resign tomorrow. The Sunday Telegraph also expects that to happen. And the Sunday Times says the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, will be out if Burnham comes in. Kemi Badenoch told the Mail on Sunday she'd never do a deal with Nigel Farage. But on the inside, a photograph of the Prime Minister and his wife, Victoria, who've been holed up at the country retreat Chequers, saying now he has turned to the one person he trusts the most. And the Sun on Sunday said Jeremy Clarkson is in remission from cancer. And the Sunday Mirror reports that the Royals are about to reveal their tax affairs. So let's get going then with a conversation that's dominating everything. Welcome to the 3 of you. Jess, you resigned from Starmer's government last month and you told us the reasons why. Does it feel to you like this is it now?
I mean, look, it very much does feel like this is it. And I mean, I don't know if the veracity of the news reporting about what will happen tomorrow, but it feels like we've come to the end of the road, and that actually just it being as dignified as possible and allowed to be in Keir Starmer's gift a little bit does seem like the very best solution, rather than next week just being an enormous bun fight of everybody having a big row.
Toby Perkins, is it right that Keir Starmer stands down?
No, I don't think it is. I think that, as you rightly said in your thing, we're beyond to our 7th Prime Minister in 10 years. I don't believe that this is a government that's manifestly failing. He took the Labour Party from its worst ever defeat to its second best ever victory. And I think it deserves a bit of time. And we're clearly in difficult times. But on all of the key functions, this is a government that actually isn't doing so bad. You know, the best growth in the G7, NHS waiting times falling. We've got the net migration down by 3/4, getting on top of the asylum backlog. It is remarkable that we've managed to talk ourselves on the back of really bad local election results into this sort of scale of crisis.
Luke, you're supporting Andy Burnham's campaign. As far as Toby's concerned, this doesn't need to happen.
Well, Makerfield, it really was an era-defining moment for not only the election of a great local MP, but it was a bit of a referendum on the future of our party going forward. And I think it's right that the Prime Minister's taken this weekend to do a bit of reflection, perhaps that he'll take a step back so that all of us can take a step forward and unite around Andy's really vivid message of hope.
But how is it unity if essentially you've got one group in the Labour Party and one man who's very ambitious who's saying that the votes of fewer than 30,000 people give him a mandate to run the whole country?
Well, look, in Makerfield, he brought together those who drifted away from us and voted reform, and he brought together the coalition of progressive parties as well. And I think that's what's unfolding at the moment, that across the PLP, left, right, north and south, they really buy into Andy's vision of hope.
OK, well, we will see. There's lots to talk about, and we're grateful to all three of you for coming in this morning. So in the first week of January, you might remember, Sir Keir Starmer told you and me that he would still be Prime Minister by 2027. That now looks unlikely, to say the least. Dreadful election results in May, the Health Secretary resigning, the Defence Secretary walking out. And then this week, Andy Burnham, who's never made much secret of his ambition, won the Makerfield by-election handsomely. And he hopes that will lead him to number 10. The future of our country is at stake tonight. The contest could be the most important by-election in modern history.
Andy Burnham is duly elected. Thank you.
What does he do next and when?
Everyone can feel that the country isn't where it should be.
Next stop, Downing Street.
If there is a contest, just to be clear with you, then yes, I will run, I will stand, and I've said repeatedly, I'm not going to walk away from that.
This now is the change moment.
You're running away from questions, Mr. Burnham.
Over the coming days, the Prime Minister and Andy can speak and agree a managed way forward.
Well, let me show you what's happening in Downing Street right now. Not much outside, but who knows what is going on behind that famous front door. Well, someone who can hopefully shed some light on what is happening is the Business Secretary, Peter Kyle. Welcome to you this morning. Thank you for coming in. We heard there the Prime Minister say on Friday he would fight any challenge to his leadership. Is that still true?
Well, he's fighting for our country, and today he's hard at work, as he has been every day that I have known him as leader of the Labour Party and Prime Minister. He's also making time this weekend to try and reflect on the political challenges that he faces, our country faces, our party faces.
Is it still true that he would fight a leadership challenge?
These are decisions for Keir to make, and that's why I said that he is taking the time, as well as dealing with all the issues that a Prime Minister deals with over a weekend, a very busy weekend, that he's also taking the time to think through what the political realities are today compared to last week, the week before. But I know that he's a Prime Minister who always puts country first, and that he'll be framing every decision that he makes today on behalf of the country in his day-to-day job as Prime Minister, but also when he thinks about the party going forward. It will always be about what's in the best interests of the country.
You say he's now reflecting on what to do. That is a very clear signal that he is thinking about resigning or spelling out a transition to Andy Burnham.
I'm just not going to... I know it's frustrating for your viewers. I know people want from me certainty, but this is a moment where there is clearly political uncertainty. We as a party have got to learn the lessons of where the Conservative Party failed time and time again, where there was political uncertainty in their party. They put the chaos onto the country. We are not going to do that. The conversation that I had with Keir, the Prime Minister, on Friday was a thoughtful conversation. He was very mindful of the interests of the country. And in that conversation, he repeatedly said to me and asked my advice on what I believe the country wanted at this moment in different circumstances. He never once acted in a self-interested way and put his own interests at the middle of all of this. And I know that is how he will be acting this weekend.
And what was your advice to him?
I won't talk about my advice because it was a personal, private conversation.
Forgive me, Peter Kyle. You've just told us what he said to you, that he sought your advice, that he was thinking about what was right for the country and the party. So forgive me for pressing you to reveal what that advice might be.
It was a personal, private conversation. What I wanted to do, because I've seen so much reporting that is completely out of kilter from the experience that I had, and there was just the two of us in the room, I wanted to say that he was very thoughtful, he was professional, and he led through a conversation about the challenges our country faces, about the political issues which are unfolding at the moment, and ask my views. So I'm not giving away the details of it, but I am talking about the tone and the content. It's really important just to spell out for people. We are a tight party. Just look at the panel that you've got there. You've got Luke, who served on my ministerial team until recently. You've got Jess, who I supported for leader. You've got Toby, who I served in the shadow education team with. We are a tight group of people, and we are now facing a period of political uncertainty, and we need to find a way to get through this that puts the country first. This is what we are trying to do. I hope people see the actions of the Prime Minister and the actions that I have taken as Secretary of State at every point, not just in the job, but in the political realities that we faced in the last few weeks. It is how we maintain the authority of a government, the authority of this Labour government, and the authority of a Prime Minister as we go through what is, I acknowledge, a period of political challenge.
But how can the Prime Minister have any authority when more than 100 of his MPs have said he should go? We know that the Energy Secretary, the Home Secretary, the Foreign Secretary, the Transport Secretary and others have told him he should think about moving on. That authority has gone.
Well, when you say you know, it has been reported. And what's been reported about my conversation with the Prime Minister bears no resemblance to how the conversation unfolded. So I'll just put that out there for your viewers to make their own.
But I will also say to viewers also that conversations that we have had here at the BBC have made it absolutely clear that in those cases, those are views that have been conveyed, OK?
The Prime Minister has invited a range of conversations with trade union leaders and others who are involved in running the country and upholding the authority of the country. So these are the things that I think he will be making time in a busy schedule to think about this weekend. But look at actions. I mean, don't look at the words. This week, the Prime Minister was in G7. He sat with Modi and had a meeting with Prime Minister Modi. They got, through negotiation, the India trade deal finalised and will now be implemented so that next month it will be fully explored and exploited by businesses. A Prime Minister that doesn't have an authority doesn't do those deals and doesn't have the ability to get those sorts of things across the line because they are tricky, difficult negotiations. So the Prime Minister, at this moment in time, is exercising his job as Prime Minister with authority. I want to make sure that I do my part to ensure his authority through this period. Now, I can't predict the future. I don't know what's going to unfold in the days that lie ahead. I don't know the decisions that he will make on behalf of our country as he considers these issues and then makes decisions. But we will find a way for this to be, whatever unfolds, a functional process, one where the Labour Party is seen to put the interests of the country first and foremost, and we will carry on delivering for this country through whatever does unfold in the days ahead. So that's because Keir demands it.
So there will be a process. I think what you are conveying to people this morning, very carefully, without wanting to preempt the Prime Minister's own words, is that the Labour Party is entering a period where there will be some form of transition.
Well, I don't want to come on here and be delusional that there is no process, there is no forces at work which are challenging the Prime Minister as leader. That is clearly the case.
So
what I'm trying to say is that it is really important that we govern through whatever unfolds or may not unfold in the days ahead. I just want to be upfront about that. We are going to put the country first. And I know that all the other names that are being spoken about, and you've been discussing up there on your panel and we'll discuss through the day, these names also want this to be the case. We are committed as a Labour Party to learn the lessons of the Tory party in government and make sure that we get through these whilst always being focused on delivering for the people of this country.
And that means, I think you're hinting, but I think you're saying as clearly as you can, that means some form of orderly transition.
No, what it means is whatever unfolds, we must put the interests of the country first, and that's what I'm striving for. But you are a cabinet minister, and I want to point out to people that it is notable and important when you listen carefully to a cabinet minister saying the Prime Minister is thinking and reflecting to be ready so that the country can be stable through whatever unfolds. That is a world away from what the Prime Minister and you and other ministers have been saying in recent weeks, which is he will fight no matter what. That's changed, Peter Kyle. Well, I've just watched your show too many times in the past and seen people in my position come on these programmes and look like they're completely detached from the reality that everybody knows is there. And the reality right now is that there is processes underway. There are people who seek to challenge Keir. Now, I don't know for fact what the next few days will entail, but what I am saying with absolute categoric certainty is that the collective endeavour of this government, its secretaries of state and ministers, led by a prime minister that always puts country first, is to make sure that we maintain the authority of this government and we carry on doing so, whatever may be the case. Just in the last week, you've seen economic figures, unemployment has started to fall, growth is still being maintained. These core driving factors that are turning a corner of our country, getting to the point where our public services are benefiting because we're now able to invest in our public services responsibly based on the fiscal rules that the Chancellor has stuck by steadfastly. These are now benefiting, and that will continue to be the case through whatever may or may not unfold into the future.
Well, that is what you would like to happen. But many people watching this morning might think that Labour is on the cusp of doing precisely what you promised the country you wouldn't do. Change leader, have political chaos, look shambolic. We're going to hear from the former Cabinet Secretary, Lord Case, a bit later, who says there is a cost to this. This is already costing us money in the financial markets. It already means decisions, vital decisions, are not being made. What do you say to the country who might just think, well, how on earth have you got yourselves into this position?
Well, I'm not going to repeat what I already said, but I think the first thing is that our effort is to learn the lesson of the Tories and make sure that any change that may or may not happen is done in a functional way and in a way that keeps the government focused on the needs of people. I will make this political point because you're asking me to make a political point. The other lesson that the Labour Party needs to learn from the Tories that they never learned was that whenever they saw a challenge in their party, they always thought that changing the person at the top would fix everything. And that palpably, patently, is not the case in any circumstance. So we do need to, as a party, if we are going into this period where we're considering the impact of the defeat at the last local elections, that we think of the project as well. We think of the purpose of the Labour Party and we think about why that was challenged in the period leading up to that local elections. These things cannot be solved by one person, and if there is a change, then that person needs to be cognizant as well, and we all need to be aware that the Labour Party, the leadership is more than one person. There are different leadership positions in lots of different places, and we all need to bear responsibility for failure, as well as look to the leader to lead us through success and challenge.
If Keir Starmer does step down, ought there to be a contest?
I'm not going to go answer any question directly on an if, because that's uncertainty.
Well, let me
but my approach to this has always been that contests are better wherever possible. That needs to be balanced with the needs of maintaining authority of a party through any processes that may unfold. But as I said, let's see.
Do you think Andy Burnham would be a good Prime Minister? In September, when he made a lot of headlines at the party conference, you seemed pretty cross. You said, it is a case study that sometimes fireworks can light up the night sky, but they also come back to earth with a solid thump. And a couple of weeks ago, you said, entitlement is not a qualification for leadership. Does Andy Burnham have the qualifications to run this country?
I always try and be outspoken and frank in any moment in time based on what's happening in politics at that moment. I think our party is burgeoning with talent. I look around from the 24 intake all the way through to our members that are coming through in councillors and council leaders like the brilliant Bella Sankey down in Brighton and Hove, the council leader that in my area.
Would Andy Burnham be a good Prime Minister?
So I think there is lots of people out there that have the qualifications, the temperament and the qualities to become Prime Minister. I think Andy Burnham could be one of those people.
And would you serve in his cabinet if he ends up in number 10?
Well, I think I've thrown my heart and soul into reindustrialising our economy, getting growth into the economy, supporting those high growth sectors of our economy. I am loving this job and I've been doing it since September. If I ever have the chance to serve a Labour government and doing this sort of thing, then of course I would grab it with both hands because it is a privilege of a lifetime and it is changing lives and creating jobs around our country.
Peter Cowell, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning.
Thanks,
it's a
Laura.
difficult weekend for the Labour Party and you've, I think, conveyed a message quite clearly. Peter Cowell, thank you very much indeed. Well, let's put that straight to a senior figure in the Labour Party. In fact, someone else who used to be Business Secretary, Lord Hutton, was in Tony Blair and Gordon Brown's cabinet, serving alongside one young Andy Burnham. There they are in 2007. Burnham had just entered the cabinet as Chief Secretary to the Treasury, and Lord Hutton was was a business secretary. And let's speak to him now. Thank you very much indeed for joining us from a very beautiful Cornwall. Listening to Peter Kyle there, it seemed very clear here in the studio that there is a high chance that Keir Starmer may be on his way out.
Yes, well, it sounded like that to me as well, Laura. And I think it's a horrendously difficult position that Keir finds himself in. And I agree very much with what Peter said. I'm sure Keir will make a decision that's right for the country. I mean, the sad and sorry truth is that Keir has lost the support of a lot of members of the Parliamentary Labour Party after a series of missteps and mistakes over the last 2 years. And, none of us want to find ourselves in this position, but, here we are. And he's got to find the right way forward. I mean, I'm now an ordinary party member. If there's going to be a change of leadership, which looks certain now, I'd kind of like a choice in that decision myself. I think choice is always a good thing in politics. But that's very much up to the Parliamentary Labour Party to sort out. But we are clearly now at a moment of transition. That's very obvious to everyone watching the programme and anyone who's been reading the newspapers the last few days. So I just want this process to be done in the best possible way, putting the country's interests first and allowing the Labour government, which I very strongly support, to find a new momentum going forward.
Contests, however, can be incredibly damaging, incredibly divisive, because there's no way in politics to have a contest without different sides pitting themselves against each other. Wouldn't you want to avoid that?
Well, I think you can pitch ideas against each other. That's one thing. It's not like pitting people in a sort of personality sort of based politics against each other. Politics is ultimately about ideas. And, we should have a debate about the direction. I think the fundamental problem for the government has been that, we've really struggled, I think, coming in with a huge mandate, we've really struggled to address some of the fundamental underlying challenges that the economy is facing, particularly on economic growth. But you could say the same, Laura, about defence policy, on welfare reform, controlling illegal immigration. We've really not really progressed, I think, policy in those areas sufficiently. So really, for me, it's all about policy. The personality-based politics, I think, will, get you to the end of the day maybe, but it won't get you to the end of a 5-year term of government. And that's what we've got to think about. It's about, the ideas that are going to take us to that point where we can go back to the country in 3 years' time and say, look, we deserve another term in government.
And
we're a long way from that now. I mean, I think everyone would accept that.
Do you think that Andy Burnham is the kind of politician who could do that? I mean, you sat alongside him in cabinet all those years ago, but you have worked with him in government. Could he be up to that challenge that you've spelt out very clearly?
Yeah, I think he could be. But, he's got to have a clear governing principle. He's got to know where he wants to take the country. He's got to have it clear in his mind about how he is going to address those fundamental challenges. And, that's got to be mapped out by Andy a little bit more clearly about, how he's going to do those things. But I think I've got nothing but respect for Andy Burnham as a politician, as a leader, as someone who really can communicate brilliantly. I mean, he's got all of those skills and qualities in abundance. But, the challenges are going to be the same. And I agree with Peter when he said, look, we can change a leader, but that leader is going to face exactly the same challenges as the one you've just deposed. I mean, they just don't disappear in a puff of smoke when a new leader arrives. So he's really got to set out for the party and particularly the country, the direction of travel. And I think the other big challenge he faces, Laura, is that, we've got a mandate actually based on the 2024 election, and we should stick to that. I don't think we can do a volte-face in the middle of a 5-year parliament and start doing a whole lot of different things on economic policy or tax policy or anything else. I think that's a very, very difficult line to cross. So he's got to think very carefully about how he manages all of those things. But I think he's got the skills, yes, absolutely. And I think he's shown that.
In terms, though, of the difficulties that you've spelled out, those big questions for the public, as things stand, here we are, as you suggest, there's a lot that we don't know about what Andy Burnham might do in office. So if there were to be what's called a coronation, he was able to move straight in. Would that be fair on the public when he has no mandate from the country?
I think it's a challenge, for sure. And I think it's got to be met and mastered by by Andy and in fact, any of the other candidates who want to put their hat in the ring. We've got to get a sense of where they want to take the country. And I think that's the very least that leadership candidates owe to the electorate at this moment in time. I think the country is watching, obviously, and we're the people who usually make the decision about who should be Prime Minister, and we don't want to give that up lightly.
John Hutton, thank you so much for joining us from Cornwall this morning. Well, Toby, Jess and Luke have been listening carefully to Peter Kyle and then John Hutton. Toby, you said you didn't think Keir Starmer should go, but although he didn't quite spell it out, it sounded really pretty clear from Peter Kyle saying he was thinking rather than fighting. It sounds like he is on the way out.
Well, I mean, I can't add anything more than what Peter said in terms of what the Prime Minister is thinking. I mean, I've laid out that I think if we as a country go on to our 7th Prime Minister in 10 years, when we have a government that is 7% behind in the polls, that is delivering on the main things that it said it was going to, because we had bad local election results, and that's a hell of a bar to set for whoever comes after Keir. And if we're here in a year's time, we've had bad election results in May, I won't be joining the siren voices calling for the next one to go. I think ultimately we could do with calm heads. Let's see what happens this week.
Isn't there a very dangerous precedent, Luke, then, if this does happen, someone wins a by-election and then they get a kind of chance to have a go? I mean, is that serious for you as a party to look at getting rid of Keir Starmer less than 2 years into your term in office? Well,
I think 2 years ago, Laura, we were in a completely different political moment, and Keir's defining legacy is going to be that of bringing Labour to a landslide win against the Conservatives. But we find ourselves in a very different political moment now, don't we? We've got Farage as our principal opposition, not that of the Conservative Party. With that two-party system that you're familiar with throughout your career is splintering right in front of us. And I think that the result in Makerfield shows that Andy Burnham is that unifier that meets this political moment now.
Jess?
Look, I mean, I agreed with what Lord Hutton was saying, and Andy Burnham will have to prove that he is that unifier beyond the bounds of Makerfield and Greater Manchester more broadly. Whenever I'm with Andy Burnham, we always have an argument about which is better between Birmingham and Manchester. So I look forward to Birminghamism coming online when... my microphone keeps falling off. I apologise.
Sort that out.
I apologise.
Explain what the crash is.
But to explain that I'm not just falling apart at the seams. I think that look, Peter, basically, it feels like a sort of like a slow resignation, and I presume then it's going to come tomorrow, and we'll be all watching the podium be put out.
And I think we should underline, actually, to people watching, to hear a cabinet minister talk like that about a process, emphasising the Prime Minister's thinking and reflecting. That's not normal.
Yeah, it was absolutely not normal. And fair play to Peter for coming on in a very difficult situation and remaining so calm throughout. But yes, that is not a normal situation.
But Toby, what do you think your constituents in Chesterfield would make of what you're all up to?
Well, I mean, I think they will be very surprised that we've got to this place within 2 years of a landslide victory. It's totally unprecedented. And I think it is important that people get an understanding as to what it is we're moving on to if we are transitioning, because clearly Andy's focus has been on Makerfield. He's done a remarkable job. It's a tremendous result. But Makerfield isn't Milton Keynes. It's not Kent. It's not those Midlands towns that we also need to win. And we do need to recoup that coalition that Blair had and that Starmer was able to reproduce.
But Luke, when your constituents might say to you, I can't believe that you're doing this again, what will you say to them?
Well, I would say we need an orderly transition, but I would say that Andy's proven something quite unique for this moment, which is bringing together our working class base.
But if your constituents would say to you in York, I voted for someone else nearly 2 years ago. This guy has got nothing to do with me. I don't live in Makerfield. This isn't what I asked you to do. How would you explain it to them? You know, Keir Starmer, look, there he is, nearly not even 2 years ago, walking in on the back of a huge majority. What's your explanation to your own constituents about why you, as a group, are booting him out?
Well, our constituents voted for individual names on the ballot paper. We do, but they voted.
True, but they also voted for a leader, and they voted for
Can I just say,
party.
in my constituency, they absolutely didn't. We do live in a parliamentary democracy. To be perfectly honest, I won in spite of Keir Starmer in my constituency, and he would be the very first person to admit that.
Toby?
Well, I mean, you know, clearly we went from 200 under Jeremy Corbyn to 400 under Keir Starmer. That wasn't just because we had 200 better MP candidates.
OK, well, Andy Burnham, like Keir Starmer, has also this weekend been hunkering down with his family. We haven't heard from either of them. He's preparing for the road ahead, more likely the West Coast Main Line down to London tomorrow. But if he makes it to number 10, what would he actually do? There's no manifesto for a Burnham government, and there's not been much chance to ask him about his plans. But Andy Burnham started out as an MP 25 years ago, back in 2001.
I grew up in this area and I know it well. I know the people well.
Andy Burnham. You, Mr. Speaker. Does he agree with me that the case for reform at the House of Lords is now urgent? AP.
Ed Miliband.
Andy Burnham.
David, all right. Yeah, it's clear, man.
It's not up to me. It's not my decision.
I'm not making any further comment. I've said everything that I needed to say.
Andy Burnham should never have been blocked.
I declare that Andy Burnham is duly elected. Thank you.
Politics there. He is the man who might be on his way to Downing Street in between Count Binface and a campaigner for animal rights in a fox costume. Luke, you've been part of the Burnham campaign, and we've all seen, you know, incredible energy, incredible excitement around that in this by-election campaign. But if he makes it to number 10, what can people watching this morning actually think will be specifically different?
Well, I think he's shown that his authentic style can put us back in touch with working-class families. He's shown that hope can triumph over division. But he's going to be drawing from his 9 years as Greater Manchester Mayor, his fight for social justice for the Hillsborough 97, things like bringing good industrial jobs back, bringing better skilled jobs back to places like Makerfield. And he talked about something like the Makerfield test, that policies here in London have got to work for left-behind places like that. We've got to bring power back to the north and other areas that have been forgotten. So these are the sorts of things that are core to who he is as a politician.
But there are people who are having a hard time in this country, all over the country. It's not just in the northwest. It's not just in a place like Makerfield. So what, like, specifically in terms of something that he wants to change, can you tell people that would be different?
Well, I think he's talked about the fact we've got a broken Westminster and economic political model in this country. And that doesn't just go back to a couple of years pointing fingers at the Conservatives. It tracks right back that things like trickle-down economics aren't working. OK,
but I know the unions, for example, as I understand it, are asking Andy Burnham this week to say that he would change the spending and borrowing rules, the fiscal rules. Is that something he's going to do?
Well, he's backed the fiscal rules. Laura, I worked at the Bank of England in the city. I wouldn't be here batting for Andy if I didn't believe he was deeply credible on the economy.
So he won't do that, so he's going to disappoint the unions?
Well, he's going to be backing the fiscal rules, and that was what I think Rachel Reeves should be respected for bringing in the stability rule and the investment rule, and that is what Andy's committed to, because that is how we deliver better public services as well.
Toby, in terms of a change that absolutely seems to be coming, actually, when you look at how voters feel about Keir Starmer, how many people have felt about Keir Starmer for a long time, I know it's not what you want to see, but actually, if you've got any choice, isn't it right, actually, if somebody's a good communicator, they've shown they can beat reform, actually, isn't it time, isn't it the right thing?
Well, I mean, I think Andy did a remarkable job in Makerfield, and I think he's a really talented politician. I worked for him in the first year as a shadow junior minister in education. So, you know, I've got tremendous respect for him. You know, I think I've been talking more generally about why I think we are sort of lurching in dangerous territory. But, you know, beyond this, it's very interesting questions you're asking there, to Luke. We do need to know, you know, if we've got a change of direction, are we basically still supporting the manifesto that we were all elected on? Yes. Or is this a radical departure?
So, yes, he is. I just heard Luke slightly off camera. He said, yes, Andy Burnham will follow the manifesto from July 24.
Well, that's right, because I actually also think, Laura, if I may, one of the reasons I took a step back from Peter's team in government was that with respect to the manifesto, as Jess has set out on some things, by the way, that we've been too slow and too timid, and this political moment with global turmoil demands the sorts of boldness and urgency of change.
It may be, though, that Andy Burnham isn't the only person who tries to get this job. Jess, you've been backing Wes Streeting, and you actually, like Peter Kyle did, believe that there has to be a contest and other people ought to run. Do you think Wes Streeting will still run?
I mean, look, I have no idea. What I would very much hope has happened over the weekend is that the prospective people, including Keir Starmer, although that seems to be sort of now sort of heading towards decline, have had a conversation about what is best for the country. All that matters, the only question that any of the prospective people have to ask themselves is how do we beat reform, and how do we make sure that we deliver what is best, and to some of what Peter was saying, not cause total chaos in the meantime. I do very much think, though, like Lord Hutton said earlier, that you can't just come and take over. Like, there is, you do have to come and present your ideas to, at the very least, the Parliamentary Labour Party. And so I very much hope that over the next week at least, that whilst we may not end up with a full-scale contest, that there is an opportunity to properly question, in somewhat of a public forum, what's coming next. OK, well, we're always very happy to provide public forums for good old political debates in this studio, and there should be, as normal, a meeting of all Labour MPs tomorrow night, Monday night. It's normally the PLP in the corridors of power in Westminster. Who knows who'll turn up and what will be said behind closed doors tomorrow. Well, what will be going through the Prime Minister's mind this weekend? He's often been criticised for maybe not wearing his heart on his sleeve. One of his closest advisors in Number 10 was Paul Ovenden, who worked side by side with Keir Starmer for 6 years. He was here a bit earlier this morning, and I asked him how the Prime Minister will be thinking about the huge decision he has to make.
Yeah, in all the time I worked for Keir, as you say, 6 years or so, there were many occasions, as any political relationship, where we didn't agree on everything. You know, different decisions were taken, but what I always knew was that Keir's way of thinking was always put the country first, the Labour Party second, and probably his own ambitions or well-being third. And so I think that whatever decision Keir makes over the coming days, I know that that is what will guide his way of thinking. He will be entirely focused on what he thinks is best for the country.
What would you be advising him if you still work for him right now?
I think the really important thing is, I'd just take a step back from that and say that Keir took over the Labour Party in 2020. He took over a party that was infected with a poison of anti-Semitism that had been just given its worst result in modern history. And he was the only person that could have turned that around. And he did so in one election with a spectacular result and did brilliantly. And I think that he's earned the respect to make that decision, whatever decision it is he takes, in his own way, in his own time. So I would be advising him to take the counsel he needs, to think clearly, think in the way he always has done about the country first. But I don't think it's befitting of me to advise him either way. I think he has to make a decision himself, and I think he'll be able to do that.
Can you believe, though, that it has got to this point in less than 2 years? I mean, a lot of things have gone wrong, and I know that you've done some hard thinking about what went wrong during the time that you were there too.
We have now seen a succession of governments in this country where great optimism, great hope at the start that falls away very, very quickly. And so what I think has happened over the last couple of years has not necessarily been about individual mistakes, although of course there have been mistakes, and Keir and other members of the cabinet have been very, very clear about that. What we need is a politics that reimagines how Westminster and Whitehall work. Ultimately, Andy Burnham has just won a fantastic result with Makerfield, and I'm sure we'll get on to that in a second. But what he did there was inject hope and optimism, along with some very sensible policies on keeping migration low, on sticking to the fiscal rules, on not raising tax on ordinary people.
A bit wobbly on that at one point.
Well, I think it's quite clear where he got to. But Westminster and Whitehall is where hope and optimism go to die. And without a proper plan to change the system, to change the structures of Whitehall in ways that will upset some people, and to put politics back in the service of ordinary voters, just as Andy's been saying in Makerfield, I don't think that any of the kind of policy solutions, whatever, will match the task at the moment.
Do you think that Andy Burnham is the person to do that? I mean, people might be watching this morning and thinking, hang on a minute, this is a shambles. Labour promised that they wouldn't do this. Now it might be the case that someone who got votes in one by-election might be about to be walking into Downing Street without really having told the country anything about his plans.
Well, Andy has a fantastic charisma. He is someone who really is able to connect with people and voters in a way not all politicians can do. And so I think that as long as the manifesto from 2024 is being honoured in spirit, I don't see any reason why it's a real problem.
But we don't know that he's going to do that, and a lot of his supporters on the left actually hope that he's going to move away from that. But that's, I think, a policy debate that we'll get into a lot in the next few weeks. Do you think Keir Starmer's been a good Prime Minister?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a tendency to always talk about the mistakes we've made, negative things, and as I say, even Keir himself would admit that. But if I think about the country that we inherited in 2024, an economy that was in a really, really bad shape, and we've talked about the £22 billion black hole in the show plenty of times. If I think about where asylum or small boat crossings were at that time, or NHS waiting lists, all those things, because of the hard lifting that's been done over the last few years, are now going in the right direction. The next couple of years, next 3 years, of which we will have a Labour government, there is still a lot of really hard things to do, but a foundation has been laid. My view is that the next election is easily winnable for the Labour Party. Not that it will be easy to win, but it's definitely there to be won. And I think that we don't have the luxury now of spending all this time talking to ourselves or throwing ourselves into chaos. We need to get on with that. If Labour now makes the right, sensible decisions going forward, it can win the next election, and Keir Starmer and the team around him will be the people that laid the groundwork for that.
Paul Ovenden, thank you so much for coming in. We will see exactly what comes to pass. Thank you. Well, you don't need me to remind you, there have been 6 comings and goings of Prime Ministers since David Cameron left in 2016. We used to have a reputation for being the kind of country that didn't really do that. Maybe even a bit boring compared to some of our continental neighbours. But if Andy Burnham gets his way, he could be the 7th Prime Minister in 10 years.
I will do everything I can as Prime Minister to steady the ship over the coming weeks and months. But I do not think it would be right for me to try to be the captain that steers our country to its next destination.
I will shortly leave the job. It has been the honour of my life to hold. I do so with no ill will, but with enormous and enduring gratitude to have had the opportunity to serve the country I love.
I want you to know how sad I am to be giving up the best job in the world. But them's the breaks.
I recognise, though, given the situation, I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party.
I leave this job honoured to have been your Prime Minister. This is the best country in the world, and it is thanks entirely to you, the British people.
And guess what? If Sir Keir Starmer resigns or sets out a timetable this week, and it is still an if, then the UK will mark the 10-year anniversary of the vote to leave the EU by saying goodbye to another Prime Minister. Well, the Shadow Chancellor, Mel Stride, worked for 2 of the 6 Prime Ministers that we just saw. The Conservatives are mostly responsible for all of this chopping and changing and what a lot of people feel a political system that's been a shambles.
Well, I don't think we're responsible for what's happening now, because very clearly what's happened now is this government's been in
office for a couple of years, has made a complete mess of the economy in particular by huge amounts of borrowing, putting up taxes to the highest levels in our history, destroying jobs. We've got the highest unemployment in 5 years now, and very high and sticky inflation, and that's translating
Labour
into all sorts of
politicians say this morning that it's the fastest growing economy in the G7, and that they took over an economy that had got it into an absolutely dreadful state.
Anybody with a straight face would say that this government's record on growth has been anything other than anemic and borderline abysmal. In fact, the economy shrank in April by 0.1% of GDP. The record there has been very poor. And let's be clear as to why that's happened, Laura. It's happened because the government came in, they taxed particularly businesses in a way that they said they wouldn't when they were in opposition, which has destroyed jobs and translated into higher inflation as well, borrowed £250 billion more than the plans that they inherited. That has stoked inflation as well and destroyed jobs and destroyed growth and increased unemployment.
But let's stick on a potential extra change of Prime Minister, following on from many that happened under the Conservatives. Do you think that it was damaging to the country to keep changing? And would it be damaging if there is another change now?
What we need is stability at all times in our political system. Clearly, you need stability, but you need the right policies. And I think the concern that I have is in terms of what's good for the country, even if we have a change of Prime Minister now, and that looks increasingly likely, what's going to follow? Is that going to change the fundamental nature of the Labour Party in Parliament? No, of course it isn't. The Labour Party in Parliament has, as most Labour governments do, high taxes, high borrowing in their DNA. And we've already seen what happened when Labour tried to control the welfare bill, get people off benefits and into work, which is essential to meeting the challenges, for example, of a stronger defence and spending more on defence and so on. They're not capable of doing that. And I see no evidence, from what I've seen particularly of Andy Burnham, that he's going to be in a position to make that change.
But Andy Burnham does have a higher favourability with the public. The polling all suggests that he is an unusual thing in 2026, a relatively popular politician. Would he be a harder opponent for the Conservatives?
Look, what matters is what happens through time. And all the evidence with Andy Burnham is he's somebody that flip-flops, he changes his view from 1 minute to the next.
But would he be a harder opponent for Kemi Badenoch across the dispatch box?
In the sense that my concern about Andy Burnham is the flip-flopping. My concern about Andy Burnham is that he doesn't seem to know what the fiscal rules are. You've seen some of the market reaction, the bond market reaction to Andy Burnham, which was to increase our borrowing costs. That's higher costs for people with their mortgages and businesses, borrowing costs and so on and so forth. Plus a lot of what appear to be unfunded commitments that he puts out there and then resiles from later when somebody tells them that it all just doesn't add up. So none of that, I'm afraid, fills me with any confidence.
But he did show in Makerfield, as his colleagues in the Labour Party have been emphasising, he did show that he could be reformed. Now, that's something that the Conservatives have been struggling to do in the last few years. You did, though, this week, the Conservatives get a good result in the Aberdeen South by-election, where there was a lot of concern about the oil and gas industry. But in Makerfield, you got 997 votes. That's all.
Very good result.
Not even 1,000.
Aberdeen South, excellent result. First win in a by-election in Scotland for the Conservative Party since 1967. And it shows what good, clear policy offering can deliver and what a thoughtful approach to the economy is all about. And in that case, it was energy and jobs and the future of our economy and so on.
But
in Makerfield, just your question, Laura, if I may, look, that has been a Labour stronghold for about 120 years, OK? I think the big story was actually the weakness of reform in the face of that challenge. They threw the kitchen sink at it and didn't do as well as.
But let's stick with your party, because you say, you've never, had a hope there in that part of the world. But in 2019, you got 34% of the vote in Makerfield. This time you got 2%.
Yeah.
So in those kinds of parts of the country, that suggests you've gone way backwards. Those are constituencies where a leader of like Boris Johnson was in charge of the Conservative Party, had a hope in those kinds of places. And under Kemi Badenoch, it doesn't seem like you do.
Well, in 2019, we swept away a number of Red Ball seats, as you know, and that was not one of them. And as I say, that has been historically Labour and solidly Labour for a very long time.
So it's okay that you've got 997
I think the story,
votes
look, there'll be tactical voting, there'll be all sorts of things in play there. But I think the story there is about reform, actually, who's been coming down in the polls since last autumn from sort of early 30s down to mid-20s now. We're also seeing some results happening at the local level. So we had 2 local elections in Essex this week where 2 Conservative candidates
Those are council by-elections.
No, but they're in parts of the world where people have been writing off the Conservative Party. They're wrong to because we're winning.
Every vote matters and every contest matters. But just briefly, you are still miles ahead of where reform is. You can say that the shine has come off them, and the reflections of national polling suggest they're not surging in the way that they were this time last year. But you don't look competitive yet.
Well, no, I think we are becoming increasingly competitive. And the reason is that Labour are palpably messing up the economy, and I think the electorate know that. Reform are fantasy economists who are prepared to go out and promise the earth without any plans to how they're going to deliver on that. We are the party under Keir's leadership that is doing the deep and serious thinking about the challenges that our country faces. And in the case of energy and North Sea oil and gas, that was on the ballot paper in Edinburgh South. And the electorate got it, and
Aberdeen
we'll increasingly
South,
be doing that across.
I think you mean Aberdeen
piece.
South, but it's
Did I say Edinburgh? Sorry, Aberdeen South.
Also another
Aberdeen
fine part
South.
of the world. But
Yeah.
Mel Stride, we're grateful to you
Thank
for coming in on a busy weekend. Thank you very much for your time. Well, what is the cost of political churn? It might feel to parties that it becomes politically necessary, but the practicalities of changing leaders might be very different. Lord Simon Case's job, there he is, alongside Keir Starmer and Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak, was to steady the ship as the top civil servant in the country, and he served several prime ministers.
Uncertainty is a big challenge and a big problem for government. If Keir Starmer is left in place, but without any authority, it's impossible to effectively carry out the business of government. Equally, if we have a leadership contest that then goes on for some time, you also continue that level of uncertainty. And uncertainty isn't free. Uncertainty costs us. It actually costs us money. You can see already that the markets are responding. The amount of money that we're paying for the enormous levels of debt that this country has are going up with every moment of uncertainty. And equally, uncertainty costs us opportunities. So all the time that politicians are having conversations amongst themselves about who should be leader and prime minister, time goes by where issues of real significance to people up and down the country in the health service and education, all that time is lost, and those opportunities to get on and fix problems go. So we're now in a real bind. Now, neither option is a good one at the moment.
And in practical terms, what does that actually mean for people watching this morning? If decisions aren't being made, you say opportunities are being lost, but the brass tacks, what does that mean?
Well, take one of the biggest issues that you've been discussing in recent weeks on your show, defence spending. Huge issue with enormous national and international significance, and of course, huge political significance with the resignation of John Healey just over a week ago. Currently, decisions aren't being taken that are desperately needed on how much money we should be spending on our defence, and crucially, what we should be spending that money on and how. So it's decisions like that that aren't being taken.
And in terms of our reputation around the world, if this all happens as we expect it will, we'd have the 7th Prime Minister in a decade. What effect does that have on how our allies see us?
Well, I'm afraid it generates a pretty high degree of eye-rolling amongst our allies. I think for many years, in fact for decades, the UK was seen as a very dependable, sort of solid citizen on the world stage, that people could do business with our prime ministers. But as you say, we could be on to our 7th in 10 years, changes of direction, new policies, new people. And that costs us influence on the world stage, and it costs us in our alliances. What is also clear is, despite 2 years in power and a big majority, it's proven very difficult for Keir Starmer to take big decisions and bring his colleagues along with him. And I think that's sort of what I reflect on, is more than anything else is a change in personality doesn't fix these fundamental problems that the country faces.
What would your advice be to Andy Burnham then, if he does end up walking in, maybe as soon as the next couple of weeks?
Well, do as much preparation as you possibly can. Surround yourself with the best people that you possibly can, and by God, do your homework. You cannot duck the big decisions. coming in and thinking that you can somehow govern simply by being a better communicator or somehow vibe coding, to borrow a phrase from the AI world, that you can sort of make it up as you go along. That you cannot get through these big challenges with making it up as you go along or through a wing and a prayer. It's got to be deep, substantive work, and then take the big choices and explain to the public why you've taken those choices.
Well, advice from the inner sanctum of Whitehall there. Luke Charters, you're a supporter of Andy Burnham. Has he done the deep, hard, substantive thinking? Has he done his own work?
Well, that Makerfield result, it was not only decisive, it was instructive. And I think I would say this, the Labour Party was at its best in Makerfield, firing on all cylinders. Andy is ready.
But has he done his serious preparation, though, for government? That's a different thing to running a very successful by-election campaign.
Well, Andy's ready for an orderly transition here, drawing on his vast experience delivering on those 9 years in Greater Manchester.
Toby, are you confident that Andy Burnham would be ready to be Prime Minister?
Well, I think it has tremendous attributes, but I think it is important that we understand what it is we're supporting here. And so I think, that discussion about what is the approach we're taking, to what extent are we just trying to carry on the mandate that we got, and to what extent is this a sort of a radical departure, is an important understanding for the party and for the country.
And do you think there should be a radical departure? I mean, throughout his by-election campaign, Andy Burnham was very much defining himself against what Keir Starmer has done. Should there be a departure?
Well, I mean, my personal view is we got elected with a manifesto, and that's broadly what we should be supporting. I think that, it's important we have hope. It's important that we have a sense of that passion and energy that definitely was there in Makerfield. But, Simon Case's absolutely right that this is not an easy time in global affairs. And I don't think that there is a huge amount going wrong with this government in terms of their performance on the key issues such as immigration, such as the National Health Service, such as the economy, in spite of what we heard from the Conservatives. But clearly, we are unpopular, and that needs to change if we're going to be elected.
A bit of an eye roll there, where Toby said that the government was getting most things right.
Look, I mean, I think that the government has got most things right in the end. But I have to say that of my experience of being part of this government, that all that Simon Case talks about how momentum gets lost, and I have to say, didn't seem like a particularly pacey system to me. And actually, whoever now comes in and takes over from Keir Starmer, what they have to do is decisively make bold decisions with good advice. What Simon Case said about having good people around you and keeping some of the people in some of the jobs that are absolutely ingrained and doing a good thing would be my advice.
So you wouldn't want a big giant reshuffle?
He just needs to show that he can make bold decisions quickly, and that is not what I had seen.
OK, well, all three of you, thank you very much indeed for coming to spend your time with us this Sunday morning. A huge weekend for the Labour Party, and we're grateful to you for your time. Thank you to all of our other guests as well this morning, and thank you most of all, of course, to you from watching at home. Let's look at the live pictures of Parliament there by the River Thames, awaiting the arrival of Andy Burnham, expected there tomorrow to take up his new seat as the MP for Makerfield. But his ambitions do not end there. He hopes they'll take him all the way to Downing Street, bringing an end to Keir Starmer's time in number 10. How exactly will the Prime Minister respond tomorrow? The two men are due to speak. Well, Peter Kyle, the Business Secretary, told us that the Prime Minister would always put the country first, but he accepted there is a process underway.
These are decisions for Keir to make, and that's why I said that he is taking the time, as well as dealing with all the issues that a Prime Minister deals with over a weekend, a very busy weekend, that he's also taking the time to think through what the political realities are today compared to last week, the week before. But I know that he's a Prime Minister who always puts country first.
A clear hint there that Keir Starmer may well stand down. My colleagues across the BBC will bring you whatever happens in what might be a huge week. I'll be with Paddy O'Connell later on Sunday's newscast, but Burnham versus Starmer is a contest that's been brewing for a while, and especially at this time with the World Cup. We know they both love a match.